It was Christmas Eve, and I was sitting by the fire trying to enjoy the quiet of my apartment when my phone rang. The moment I saw her name on the screen, a knot formed in my stomach. It was my sister, and I could tell something was wrong just from the way she answered. I don't know what to do," she stammered between sobs. Her voice was breaking, full of that kind of raw panic that only happens when someone truly feels helpless. "Everything's gone. It's all gone." I froze, heart racing, unsure of what she meant. "Tell me, if you were me, would you have been able to stay calm, knowing someone you loved was calling you like this on what's supposed to be the happiest night of the year?" I didn't have a choice. I grabbed my coat, my keys, and drove through the snow-covered streets, trying to brace myself for whatever awaited me. When I arrived at her apartment, the sight that greeted me made my heart stop. Doors were ajar, drawers emptied, and her face. Her face told a story of grief and shock that no words could fully capture. But the moment she clung to me, crying uncontrollably, I realized this wasn't just about material things. Something deeper, something unimaginable, had happened. Was I wrong to think I should have seen this coming? Could I have done something differently to prevent it? I had to find out, and that night, I learned a truth that would haunt me for years. It all started a few weeks earlier, in the usual bustle of pre-Christmas life. My sister Emily had always been independent, maybe even stubbornly so. She had moved into her own apartment a few years ago, insisting she didn't need anyone's help, not even mine. I respected that, though I always kept a close eye on her, because Emily had a way of taking on too much responsibility and isolating herself when things got tough. Her job at the boutique downtown was stressful, and she had been pouring herself into it nonstop. But she was also the kind of person who lit up any room she walked into, warm, generous, and full of laughter. That December, she had been more distant than usual, distracted by work and trying to manage holiday preparations on her own. I knew she was stressed, but I didn't know just how much until that fateful call. On the drive over, my mind raced. I kept imagining the worst scenarios, someone breaking in, an accident. But nothing could prepare me for the truth. When I stepped inside, the air felt heavy, like the room itself was mourning. The Christmas tree, once bright with twinkling lights and ornaments, was toppled, its decorations scattered across the floor. Gift boxes lay ripped open, wrapping paper strewn everywhere. And then I saw it, the small, hand-carved jewelry box that Emily had treasured for years was gone. Inside had been not just her belongings, but memories. A necklace from our grandmother, a bracelet I had bought her on her 21st birthday, a small locket with our childhood photos. Everything taken. My stomach sank as I tried to comprehend the violation, the sheer audacity of someone invading her sanctuary like this. Emily clung to me, shaking, whispering fragments of the story. Apparently, she had left for just a few hours to run last-minute errands, believing her apartment was safe. When she returned, she noticed the door slightly ajar. At first, she thought maybe she had forgotten to lock it, but as soon as she stepped inside, the horror hit her. Someone had been inside. Everything valuable, every memento, every trace of personal history was gone. The police had been called, but with Christmas Eve and the storm outside, the response would be delayed. She was trapped in her own home, feeling utterly powerless. Her tears fell into my coat as I held her, my own anger simmering beneath the surface. I wanted to shout, to scream, to find whoever had done this and make them pay, but I also knew I had to stay calm for her sake. As we tried to piece together what had happened, Emily mentioned something that made my blood run cold. She had been working late at the boutique, and a coworker had commented about a strange guy who had been hanging around the building, asking questions about her schedule, her friends, and her family. Nothing seemed overtly threatening at first, just odd small talk, But now, in hindsight, it was terrifying. This person had been watching her, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And on Christmas Eve, when most people were busy with family or festivities, he had chosen to target her. I felt a mix of guilt and rage. How had I not seen this? How had we all missed the signs? Over the next few hours, we sat in her wrecked apartment, waiting for the police to arrive. Emily was shaking, clutching a blanket, and telling me stories about the little items that were gone, the necklace she had worn every day, the bracelet with my initials, a tiny figurine we had gotten as kids and kept for decades. Each story cut me deeper because I knew these weren't just objects. They were pieces of her life, of her identity, of our shared history. And they were gone, stolen by someone with no conscience. I tried to comfort her, telling her that items could be replaced, but memories and sentiment couldn't. And yet, through the panic, through the heartbreak, a thought started forming in my mind. I needed to find out who did this, not just for her sake, but to restore her sense of safety, to take back even a fraction of what was lost. As the night dragged on, I noticed something strange. Despite the chaos, despite the fear, Emily kept talking about little details, the way the locks clicked, the faint scratches on the windowsill, the pattern of footprints in the snow outside. She was observing, analyzing, trying to make sense of something that had left her feeling so helpless. And that's when I realized something important. She wasn't just a victim. She was a fighter. And maybe, just maybe, we could use what she remembered to piece together what had happened. We started comparing notes, sketching the layout of her apartment, the entry points, the possible escape routes. I called a few friends who were familiar with the area and asked them to keep an eye out. And together, we started forming a plan, not just to recover the items, but to prevent this from happening again. But before I could act, I needed to process the emotion because it was overwhelming. I sat with Emily, holding her hand, letting her cry, letting myself cry too. I kept asking myself the same question. What would I do if this were me? Would I have been smart enough to notice the warning signs, to protect my own space, to anticipate danger? The helplessness was suffocating, but somehow, in the middle of that despair, a spark of determination ignited. I couldn't let this be the end of the story. Then came the turning point. Around midnight, after the police had finally arrived and taken their reports, I noticed something that Emily hadn't mentioned, the neighbor's security camera, which faced the alley beside our building. It was one of those small, discreet cameras, but I thought it might have captured something useful. I rang the bell of the neighbor, a kind older woman who had always been fond of Emily, and explained the situation. She agreed to let us review the footage. And there it was, the shadowy figure, moving cautiously, glancing around, entering Emily's apartment, and leaving with a bag that looked far too heavy to carry unnoticed. I replayed it over and over, my hands shaking, my heart pounding. I could see him clearly enough to describe his build, his clothes, the way he moved, even the small limp in his left leg. We had a lead. At this point, I want to pause and ask you, the viewer, what would you have done in my shoes? Would you have waited for the police to handle it, or tried to take matters into your own hands? Because that's exactly the choice I faced. I could sit and stew in anger, helpless like Emily had felt, or I could do something. I knew it was risky, that confronting someone like this could be dangerous, but I couldn't sit still while the person responsible for shattering my sister's peace went unpunished. I started reaching out to people I knew, friends, family, even a few private investigators I had connections with. We pooled information, cross-referenced tips, and slowly, piece by piece, the picture of who had done this began to emerge. The culmination of days of work led us to a shocking revelation. It wasn't a random thief, as we had feared. It was someone Emily had trusted, someone she had invited into her life without knowing their true intentions. A coworker from the boutique, someone who had always seemed friendly, always offered to help, always lingered just a bit too long when Emily was stressed. He had watched her routines, memorized her schedule, and exploited her trust in the worst possible way. I felt sick, furious, and heartbroken all at once. How could someone do this to a person so kind, so unsuspecting, so vulnerable? Confronting him wasn't easy. We coordinated with the police, provided them with all the evidence we had gathered, and set up a meeting under controlled circumstances. When the truth finally came out, when he admitted to taking the items, the relief was mixed with disgust. Emily was crying again, but this time it was a different kind of tears relief, validation, closure. The stolen items couldn't all be recovered, but the knowledge that justice had been served, that the person responsible had no choice but to face the consequences, brought a sense of peace that had been missing since that night. In the aftermath, Emily and I spent hours talking, crying and rebuilding not just her apartment, but her sense of security and trust. We changed the locks, installed better security, and even started a small fund to replace some of the most important items. But more than that, we rebuilt our bond. The trauma had been a catalyst for something deeper, an unshakable connection. A reminder that family, love, and resilience are stronger than fear, stronger than loss. It wasn't easy, and the emotional scars remained, but together, we had survived something that could have broken us completely. Looking back now, I realize there are lessons in this story that go beyond the material loss. Life can be unpredictable, and sometimes the people we trust the most may surprise us in ways we never imagined. But the strength to face these challenges, the courage to act, and the love we share with those closest to us can carry us through even the darkest nights. That Christmas Eve was devastating, yes, but it also revealed the depth of human connection, the resilience we didn't know we had, and the lengths we'll go to protect those we love. If you found yourself feeling every bit of the heartbreak, the fear, and the eventual relief, then I hope you also take a moment to reflect on your own loved ones. Life is fragile, moments are fleeting, and sometimes, the best gift we can give is our presence, our attention, and our care. Like this video if you were on my side, subscribe for more stories like this, and share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. I want to hear what you would have done if you were in my shoes. Remember, no matter how dark a situation seems, there's always a way forward, always a way to protect the people we care about, and always hope. I'll see you all in the next story.